There is a mic here and another one there. No, we have three. So. Well, you can share.
He's just an avatar.
Be nice and share. So first I want to welcome David Sifry, who is the founder of many companies. Probably most of you have heard of Technorati. And he's been involved in many interesting things on the web and has been reporting about the blogosphere for a long time. And so thanks for coming. And I know you have a birthday in the family today, so happy birthday to Melody.
Hey, Mel. She's here. Happy birthday. She's here. She's in the back.
Happy birthday to
you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Melody. Happy birthday to you. Hey!
Okay, then thanks to Stefano Quintarelli for joining us. Stefano is another serial entrepreneur. So he invented the internet or something like that. And he will have some very interesting stories about how even the most physical and political parts of the networks are evolving in Italy. And then thanks for coming to Gigi Tagliapietra, who is another entrepreneur, and he will share with us some very interesting and deep thoughts about how the web is evolving. I would actually like to start with David. So for how many years did you make the State of Blogosphere reports?
Because it's been about, almost 6 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember every 6 months about getting this report with this huge growth, and it's amazing because it's still growing, and many people joining this huge conversation. So besides the numbers, how do you see that this has had any impact on the society?
Sure. Wow. Well, that one question alone, and we could do our entire session. So I'll try really hard to keep it brief and succinct. But as a result, it probably means I'm going to overgeneralize a little bit. And just to give you guys some ideas of the numbers. So Technorati today is tracking about 126 million weblogs. Yeah. That, by the way, so when I started it in November of 2002, there were about 40,000 weblogs that I knew of that we could find total. And today, we're seeing those numbers growing by about 120,000 new weblogs created every single day. So about 3 times the total size of the blogosphere when it started is actually being created every single day around the world. And these are worldwide numbers. English, by the way, is no longer the dominant language in the blogosphere. It's actually less than a third of all of the postings that occur on a daily basis are in English. Japanese has yeah.
No,
well,
because he writes so much.
I know.
He grows Italian.
Yeah, because he writes about 15 posts a day. So that's what he's keeping English down.
Yep. And so it's really been a tremendous worldwide phenomenon. Chinese, Japanese, in all of the different Romance languages, in Korean, even in Farsi and languages that you would not necessarily have expected as much growth in what people are doing and what they're saying. And so what's really fascinating to me is to watch how when you put the tools of formerly only big publishers into the hands of everyday people, what actually happens and what kind of societal change occurs. So one of the things that we track at Technorati is this concept that we call influence or authority. The idea is, basically it's the same idea as Google used for PageRank, right? How many people are linking to you, right? Google used how many pages are linking to this page. And we just said, well, how many people have linked to you in the last 6 months as the basic indicator of about how influential you are? Is it perfect as a metric? No. There's loads of reasons why it's not the best metric in the world, but it's the best metric that we could actually find to be able to keep track of all of this that's going on. And so what's fascinating to me is that there's actually over 3 million people who have a reasonable measure of authority. In other words, 10 or more people who are linking to them in the last 6 months. And that, to me, says that what we're really seeing here is an enormous enlargement of what was formerly known as the press. And that people are writing, and they're it's not just writing anymore. Of course, it's podcasting, it's video, it's all sorts of interesting multimedia. But that people are doing it, that they're creating audiences and networks even within these audiences of people responding and communicating back and forth, both locally, regionally, and globally. And certainly, and I can speak somewhat from a United States-oriented perspective because that's where I live, the concept of blogging and this concept of personal publishing has fundamentally created a shift in the world of politics as well. And I'm sure Josh will talk more about what that means, both in terms of fundraising and what that means in terms of political action, what that means in terms of the creation of a grassroots, and also the potential dangers of mob rule, right? When everybody has a voice, that also means that any rumor can go out onto the internet and get picked up by anyone. So what's fascinating for me is to see where, ordinarily, because it cost a lot of money to run a printing press, there were really only maybe 150, 200, 250 or so really large media that was out there, television, radio, newspapers, and the like. And what that has really shifted now is to a much, much, much larger group of people who have the ability to have their voices heard.
Thank you. I will ask Gigi. Well, you're a security expert, and as David was saying, at the same time, I mean, we have this huge scenario and this amazingly open environment. So, I mean, when we discussed about this session, you were saying something very interesting about who should really take care of the growth of this environment.
The point is, when we talk about security, we have an image in mind. We can imagine what we have seen. Is difficult to imagine in a different way. So what's happening is that we think we can control what's going on. We can measure it. And when we use the term, the network is complex, we implicitly want to say it's complex, but we can make it, but we can control it, okay? It's tough, but we are damn good, so we'll make it. In the last European meetings, we start talking about inextricable networks. We have to admit that we will not control what's going on. There is no way in which we can prevent accidents. There is no way in which we can defend in the old terms. The only way for a possible future is that we, you, me, everybody here, has to understand that there is a tremendous value in the network. That it's us. It's a piece of us. It's a piece of the life of my kids. It's a piece of the future life of my grandchildren when they'll come. So it's going to be our responsibility, our action, to defend the network. This is why in Europe we are really trying to address not just the awareness raising to defend, but to understand that it's like a common, it's a garden, okay? It's a public garden. Who do we want to defend our public garden? The police? We want to transform our cities into police states? Do we want to transform the network into a police state? This is the way most of the political action is looking at, you know? So I want to identify everyone here that has a Wi-Fi connection.
Which is happening, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want child pornography. Bravo. Okay, good, good. You know? So what? You know, it doesn't work. It doesn't work in a 120,000 bloggers a day and the millions of people with, it doesn't work. There is a possibility if we all understand that we are the owner of the power, of the sovereignty as citizens to defend this tremendous value. I was born in the Dolomites, and it's interesting because when it snows, you don't wait for the local authority to come and clean the road. First thing, everyone cleans the road. Okay? You clean your piece. And if someone has a problem, you also clean a little bit the other people. So if you keep your computer clean, if you keep your network clean, if you teach your friend, if you teach your grandparents, if you have responsibility, which, by the way, it's an important ability to give a response. We are responsible because we are able to give a response. And I will return to this when I want to talk to you about what have we learned 13 years ago when we started the civic networks. You know, and when Bruce Sterling says, when Paul Sappho says, do you want to know what's next? Look back a bit. You know, if you want to understand what's going on in the next 5 years, look back 10 years. And there is this value of knowledge. Citizens, human beings, individuals know stuff. And this is a value. In our business card, we put engineer, doctor. Why don't you simply write as a value, I know how to cook polenta? Is this a value? Wow, no, there is no university. But by the way, in a community, is it a value if you know something? This is what's happening in the blog. You know stuff that are relevant to your friends, to other people. And because you know this stuff, you're a value to your community. And you have to encourage people not to be shy if you don't know mathematics. Well, by the way, it's important. It's a knowledge and it's a value too. But what we started 13 years ago was to tell people, you know stuff that is relevant to the community. And if you don't say that, and if you don't defend it, nobody will. And by the way, this has been copied by an American city, Flemington, that copied this idea, and they opened the first media tech in the US, copying our idea out of Legada. And they're now trying to make a wiki out of the city, saying, if we don't talk about Flemington, who's going to talk about Flemington? If we don't talk about our hotels, if we don't talk about the values we have, about the little things we have, we cannot expect NBC or CNN to talk about it. If we understand the value, then we act. This is the point. You know, if you think something is of a value, if something is worth, then you lock your car, you take care of your kids, you go back to your daughters because you have a value, and this is what we are looking at.
Thank you very much. Stefano. I mean, as Benny was pointing out when we started, we are here to try to figure out what the state of the net is, especially on an Italian perspective. And Italy, of course, has a quite peculiar situation as far as development of networks is concerned. And I mean, you're one of the guys who knows most about this stuff that I know. So one of the reasons I really wanted to have you here is that so that you can share with us how do you see the network evolving, both from the infrastructural and from a cultural point of view in Italy?
How many days do I have?
I mean, you're very good at the synthesis, so
It's a very complicated question. Now,
yeah, that's why we called you.
well, let's start from the infrastructure, bottom up. Well, Europe is quite different than the United States because the houses are built in a different way, because radio waves are not allowed with certain powers that in the United States are allowed, because every time we dig, we find some Roman stuff, etc. Because the whole country is more densely inhabited than in the United States, so it's quite different. And this is something more or less general in Europe, with certain major differences. For example, in France, population is pretty much concentrated around Paris and in the south of France. In Italy, we have a very significant part of the population in Valpadana. We have the mountains that cross and divide, so we have problems with radio waves with that as well. In all of Europe, we used to have monopolists, state monopolies owning the infrastructure. And in 1992, politics decided that it was time that we were going to have competition in the telecommunication business. So the European Parliament released the so-called open network provision, which was a rule calling for opening the telecommunication business. And of course, you have a dominant player, which was the state-owned company that was running the infrastructure. And so the privatization of this company was one of the centerpieces of this project. And that has happened more or less throughout Europe. In Italy, the present situation is that more than 99% of the network is still owned by the former state monopoly.
Which is?
Unfortunately, which is Telecom Italia, of course, SIP, and which of course is not replicable. It's not replicable because 90% of the cost of this network. Okay, 90% of the cost of this network lies in the access part. So the copper wires that go to from the local exchange to your home. And just about 10% of the cost is the so-called backbone. When you think about the networks and what they say in the press and in the television, they always speak about the backbone as being the complicated part. The backbone is simple to replicate. The problem is replicating the access. Replicating the access because we have so many people, so many cities with problems to dig, with dense population, etc. Now, what is happening is that copper has some problems. It needs to be maintained, and that has a cost. And the amount of bits that you can squeeze into a 100 copper cable, 100 copper lines cable, is limited due to interference between the copper wires. So in certain parts where you squeeze out many bits in these copper lines, you need to substitute them with possible other copper or fiber. The telecom business is extremely governed by regulation. So it's rules that make the difference. There is a rule that says that the incumbent, the one that owns the network, needs to provide the network to other retailers at wholesale prices. So it's like someone making bread, and there is just one company that makes the farina, the flour, and then, okay, you need to sell it to the people that make bread. And you have to sell it at a cost-oriented model. That means that you need to take into account the cost of the land, of fertilization, of the work, etc., and then you derive the price of the flour, and this is the price that gets plus a margin that goes to the other people that wants to make bread. Unfortunately, this is not happening anywhere in Europe, although this is supposed to be the rule since about 10 years. And the approach that you are using is that the incumbent sells the bread, and the flour is sold based on the price of the bread, taking away all extra costs, the oven, the shop, the people selling, etc. And so you start, rather than starting from the floor of the price, you start from the price to the market, and you take away the avoidable costs. Of course, this is quite a problem, because you can never be sure how much margin the incumbent has in the retail part and how much margin it has on the wholesale part. Okay, so you can have a price squeeze. So selling at a wholesale price which is high, and with a retail price which is low, squeezing the margins for alternative operators. This is one of the reasons why fixed line operators in Europe, throughout all Europe, there are a handful of operators that are positive. The others are all losing money. And this after more than 10 years of liberalization of the market. I was telling you that, so that's one part of the problem. So we have a business structure that makes very difficult to compete, because la materia prima, the raw material, is in the hands of just one player that is also a competitor in the downhill market. Another part of the problem is the technological evolution. I mean, when we started, I remember when I sent the first email with a mobile phone, an ETAX phone back in '94. I mean, you just, if you were lucky, you had perhaps 1.2 kilobits of available bandwidth with wireless. Now we are talking about well, we all know 3G, we all know HSUPA. The step beyond will be LTE, long-term evolution, where every cell will have 100 megabits of throughput. So the bandwidth, the capacity of the wireless bandwidth is increasing. And in many cases, it's just okay to replace the copper lines. If you have a building where you have 20 apartments and 19 of them write off their subscription to the fixed network, the one providing the fixed network is still going to have the same costs, but is going to have just 1 out of 20 of revenues. So what we are going to see is an increasing problem of remunerability of the fixed network. Because, you know, in Italy, DSL started in 2000, end of 99, 2000, so it's about 8 years that we started with DSL. After 8 years, we have just 22% of the households that have broadband fixed line connectivity. After 8 years, we just have 22%. So basically what I'm saying is that 78% of the households have a physical line just to do voice. And as it happens, regulation has changed in the last year, allowing mobile operators to give fixed telephone numbers on mobile handsets. So basically you have your geographic number associated to your, this is different than in the United States. You have in Europe, you have different tariffs based on the area code of the mobile phones, as you might be aware of. So basically you have geographic numbers that are very cheap and mobile numbers that are very expensive. So regulation allowed for using geographic numbers on mobile handsets. And in order to be able to provide this, mobile operators are giving this on mobile with geographic numbers the same price as on the fixed on geographic numbers. So basically on your mobile, you can have a tariff that's similar to the one you have on your fixed number. And then why do you need to keep your subscription to the fixed line? So this will increase the number of people, as I told you before. After 8 years of DSL, we just have 22% of the households in Italy that have DSL. The other 78% use their phone just to call. And so they're perfectly, if you can give them a price plan that suits for them, they can write off their their subscription to the fixed network. And if they write off the subscription to the fixed network, we will have the problem of remunerability of the network, as I told you before, because the cost of the network is almost fixed. Of the
Is
fixed
there
network
any
is almost fixed.
solution to this, or we're
What I think, so, well,
move to
no,
so give us the
The good
Hope.
news, what is the good news?
no, there is not good news, but at least hope.
now, of course, you have to consider that phone operators in Europe have significant margins. In the UK, they have about 28% of margin. In Italy, we have about 50% of margin. So they have a lot of grasso, ciccia. I don't know how the fat. No, but ciccia is ciccia sounds better. So that, of course, this ciccia needs to be used to repay the debt because they are heavily indebted as well. So we have a problem of debt and the compatibility of the debt with the decreasing margin on the fixed network. Then, as I told you, copper needs to be changed somewhere. And there are some countries where the market works in a different way, where they are starting fiber to the home, fiber to the building, or whatever. So this is a bet. We don't know yet if there is a significant use for this, but for fiber to the whatever. But what happens if in 10 years we discover that those countries that made this decision have a significant leap ahead of the others that did not? So it's a problem of general interest. What's the solution? Over time, operators have tried to invent new ways to increase revenues on the fixed network. For example, the so-called fixed mobile convergence. If you have your voice fixed subscription and your DSL fixed internet subscription, and you have a mobile subscription, then you can add a fourth subscription and be able to use your own handset either at home or outside. This is simply not going to work because the other possibility is that you write off the previous 3 subscriptions and you just use one. So fixed mobile substitution is much more likely than fixed mobile convergence, and that will have a negative impact as well. Another thing that they were planning to add was content and IPTV. IPTV based on walled gardens, so meaning that a subscriber can just access the content of its operator. It has been around for about 4 or 5 years now, and what the consensus now is that all the extra money they can make selling movies is just almost entirely passing over to the owner of the rights. So basically the telco company has just the benefit of keeping the user with his fixed phone line. I don't see any clear positive way for an operator to increase revenues. I believe that the whole telecom industry is going to see a decrease in revenues in the next 5 to 10 years. And I believe that the fixed network will be a problem, and we will need, take for example Vodafone. Vodafone is now selling this fixed mobile substitution in Italy. They have a very nice slogan, I don't remember it now, but saying, no, it says free yourself from the fixed, or something like that. What Vodafone is doing is telling people, well, just get rid of your fixed line and use your mobile, even for data, because as I mentioned before, data and wireless is growing on capacity. And of course, when you connect with your mobile, with your PC, on the other end of the wireless segment, there is the fixed network. So Vodafone is relying on the fixed network, but it's just cutting the last part. So it's like somebody sitting on and sewing the branch where they are seated on. And they are going to benefit from this in the short term. But then the remunerability of the fixed network is going to be a problem. What I believe is that we are going to see some regulation changes, for example, implying that mobile operators will have to pay to the fixed operator a portion of money for every customer that disconnects from the fixed network and goes to the mobile. And I think that it's likely that we are going to see that the fixed network is going to be considered a commons, and that all operators playing in the market are needed, are asked to repay this common infrastructure. And in order to have a positive development of the infrastructure over the long term, I believe that we are going to see a much stronger role of politics telling what the country benefit should be in order to develop this network for the next 10 years. Something like the Piano Rovati or like us. We have probably.
Okay. And this, ladies and gentlemen, was the state of the net. Yeah, well, start packing.
No, well, don't expect. I mean, you can expect prices go down because of competition, etc. Because there is plenty of people that made significant money, for example, in the wireless, and so they can subsidize losses on the fixed. So you can expect that you're going to see a poorer quality of service at lower prices, and in the medium to long term, a raise of the prices of connectivity, an increase.
Okay, thank you. Back to David. So, I mean, you have heard about the Italian situation of the networks, and I think it's very interesting because, I mean, at Technorati you have this very privileged point of view, so that basically you were seeing different countries evolving in different speeds. So, I mean, can you share with us some stories about, I mean, what inspiration can we take from how the blogosphere evolved in different places? Because what we said in the introduction was that we're actually looking for stories we can, draw inspiration from, and we can kind of try to build upon.
Okay. So first of all, how many people here feel after we just heard what Stefan said, which was phenomenal, how many people feel really bad for the telephone companies? Oh, I feel so bad for those monopolists.
They only have 50%
Margins.
I thought it was 60%. 50%
It's
margins?
53 on the mobile and 47 on the fixed part.
Oh, their future is in jeopardy. I feel so bad. So, all right, yeah, no. So maybe I'm just an American, and I'm by definition, I'm an entrepreneur, which means I'm a hopeless optimist. Okay? No, really, I don't think it gets any worse than that. But if you ask me, what I see here is a huge opportunity. Okay? Let these old guys fail. Let them fail, right? In that the net has a way of routing around these types of regulations too. And I think that the thing that I watch, especially as a father with young children, is, watch how kids are using the net today. This is, I think, one of the areas where we as adults who, and most of us did not grow up with the internet as a part of our childhoods, although, just starting. I mean, maybe, a bunch of people here in the room actually grew up really as digital natives. But what really gets me interested is to watch the shift in the culture that has happened and is continuing to happen as the concept of not only having a computer, but actually being internet connected is as natural as breathing air and drinking water. And I think that what we're going to see is this expectation, and it is political. It is political fundamentally, right? When you have a core expectation of what is it that I'm entitled to, right? And that I deserve to have my mobile. I deserve to be able to communicate with my friends. I deserve to be able to get better and better data bandwidth. I deserve to be able to have those things. That I think we're going to see some upheaval for certain, but that the voice, the vox populi, the voice of the people will come through. And that, for those of us who are older, who aren't used to voice as just another application on the network, and actually a really small application, right? I mean, voice, you can do great voice at 8 kilobits. Think about that, right? Even less, right? But I mean, great voice, like really high quality voice, like better than anything that we traditionally hear with 8 kilobits of bandwidth. Think about that, okay? That shows you how small voice will become in this future data-oriented network. And, Paul Sappho is right. If you want to see where it's going to, just look in the past, right? Look where we were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and so on. So I can talk a little bit about the blogosphere and about the growth of citizens media and how that has transformed over the last 5 years or so. And clearly, at least just from my conversations with Paolo, with some other folks at dinner last night about what's happening here in Italy, is very, very analogous to what we saw in the United States about 4 or 5 years ago. And doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to happen the exact same way, but by the way, it's about what I saw in the UK about 2 years ago. It's about what I saw in Japan about 3 years ago as well. And every single one of these countries has followed the very, very much, almost to a T, what has happened in the United States, right? So you can kind of look at what happened in the States here, maybe as a model of where Italy and the rest of Europe will be going over the next, say, 2 to 5 years. And I think, first of all, you're going to see just an increase in the net being used purely for communication. Forget about content. Forget about digital rights management. Forget about, big media owning the network and walled gardens. Okay? I mean, sorry. If you're a big media player, if you're a big content player, and, you think it's all about the next Harry Potter movie, okay, that will be around, that's not going away, but I think it's going to become a smaller and smaller part of the overall pie, and a much less powerful part of that political spectrum. And, big companies have been trying for decades to be able to push their content that they produce down at us. And if only we would act like good consumers and just consume, it would all work. And they'd make 60% margins. And gosh darn it, we just don't. We don't act that way. And here's what's happening is that we, the people formerly known as consumers, are producers. We're producing. Right? We're sitting here with, these things in our pockets. Oops, that's my business cards. I do. But, we're sitting here with these mobile phones in our pockets that have, beautiful visual interfaces on them. They have audio inputs and audio outputs. And they have cameras on them. And we're walking around now with, little mini computers. I was over at the Naval History Museum over in Venezia 2 days ago, looking at the artillery shell computers that they used, right, to, in the old battleships in World War II. These enormous computer that, quite frankly, I have more power in my wristwatch today than these mechanical computers had during the 1940s. It's really surprising. I mean, this has more power in it than the Apollo space program computers had combined. Combined! That's including ground control, okay, is sitting in these things. And we sometimes forget about this. And the funny thing is, we SMS each other. We use it, how are you? Great, let's meet up. Right? But what this tells us is no matter how the technology changes, in the end, we're human beings. We're flesh and blood. And we love to talk to each other. And we love to find out, did you hear what Stefano just did? What? What? Right? Tell me. Right? We want to know. And I think that what we'll see, and what we certainly have been seeing in the United States over the last few years, and we're going to see more as this continues, is just this tightening of the social relationships, the social networks, and these things which are, can fly you to the moon if I had enough rocket fuel, are not being used for that. They're going to be used for, oh my God, I was so drunk last night, and you should have seen the picture I got, and oh wow, did you hear what what Paolo did, last night, and who he was with, and that we're using it to further those relationships and to both eliminate distance. So I can be sitting here on stage and I'll Twitter what I'm doing, and somebody else out there can read that I'm sitting here on stage, or can be used to actually enhance location. So I think for me, one of the things that's really, really interesting is the real advances that I have seen that occur with computer technology are almost always A, about communication, and B, in other words, not about content and distribution, it's about communication. And B, the really big advances actually start to happen when some piece of data that we only were able to transmit manually becomes automatic. Okay? So in the blogging world, it was about the ping. This idea of whenever, because look, we had websites before, right? And it was very easy to be able to create a content management system. I mean, you and Semple talk about it at the BBC, how they had content management systems for 15 years in the electronic world, and that they've had them for what, 30, right? Even before that. That wasn't the concept. The concept was that whenever you published, your software did something. It sent a little message saying, hi, I just published. And you don't even know that it happened, okay? And that has fundamentally transformed the real-time nature of the communication, because now you could have computers reading all this stuff. And I think what's fascinating to me is these are going to start transmitting, of course, with our permission, the location information that we have, not just because I say, I am in Udine, Italy right now, but because when I send a message, the GPS coordinate or the cell phone tower triangulation gets sent as part of that message. And then that then is going to be used in some really, really interesting ways that no one here has even thought of yet. Right? That, to me, if you ask, okay, so where are the things what are some of the inspirational ideas that we can take, right, is if you're a technologist, look for A, how are people communicating with one another, and B, how can we take data that was formerly hard to transmit and make it part of the application itself, and what are the new applications? So what are some of the new things that you can build when you actually automatically understand the location of where you are and what you're, and what you're doing at any given time, right? And then you combine that with your friends, right? Those, to me, are some of the fascinating applications that no one has built yet, or they're just starting to get built. And I think, if anything, a place like Italy is where the innovation can happen. Why? Because your mobile penetration is far better. Your mobile bandwidth and 3G penetration is much better, right? And you have just the same amount of creativity. You have just the same amount of intelligence to be able to build these kinds of applications as anyone anywhere in the world can. Right? That, to me, is, I think, where there's enormous opportunity. And we could go on, but I'll pass it.
Sure. No, I thought that the innovation could come from here because we are smarter, we are nicer, and we have something better, do it better,
Well,
Madonna,
yeah.
you remember Italians do it better? Okay, thank you for taking us back to Sala Grande. Now, there is one thing that I want to say is it doesn't happen by magic. So for many years, we thought, I was there when everything started. I started my business in 78, so there was no PC, there was no network, and so I've seen the movie. I told Gaspari this morning, I'm old enough to have seen the whole movie once, okay? Now it's the sequel, okay? And I know we were preaching technology is going to make your life better. Do you remember when we said this kind of bullshit saying that thanks to computer we will work less? Do you remember? I was there. I was one of the idiots who was saying that. That thanks to mobility we will just do music,
Things
enjoy
never
life, We're working like more than before,
Remember sending a fax from the beach?
Oh, yes. And those
I can
management
play.
system with the manager on an hamaca under a palm drinking something, he's taking care of his business. Okay? Is this reality? Is this what you're doing? Is this today? Is this your company? Thank you. So we missed the promise to give people a better life because it doesn't happen by magic. It depends on us. It depends on what we actually do to make it possible. It doesn't happen because we have a telco, because we have an iPhone. It doesn't happen because it depends if we do it. My wife does yoga. I do Tai Chi. She does yoga because we are different, And the other day she came back and said, I'm doing something interesting, when you flip with your legs up and head down, things that we as male cannot do, There are side effects that you can imagine. And she said that the yoga trainer said, if you look the world upside down, the earth remains earth and the sky remains sky. And I started mumbling about it. And I said, yes, the sky remains sky, the earth remains earth. But when you look at the world upside down, you start seeing things differently. Have you tried? Do you remember that Poet Society, the movie, when he stands up on the desk and he says, come over, look at the different. If you look at the world in a different way, you see things you've never seen before. But then, when you see things differently, your perspective changes. And if your perspective changes, then you act differently. And it's your action that changes the world. So my comment on that is that, yes, the sky remains sky, the earth remains earth, but if you change your point of view, if you change the way you look at yourself, as an actor, as a producer, as a real differentiator in this world, then you change your action. And if you change your point of view, you change your action, the world changes. Your community changes. This is what I learned when I first discovered the internet. The first thing I did, I said, I have to teach all the citizens in my village. And I did it 13 years ago. Okay? Teach all the children, teach all the parents. I don't know. He was there too, so yes, he sponsored this crazy idea, and I thank him. Without him, I couldn't have made it. And I don't know if you know a book from Gian Giono, the man who planted the trees, l'uomo che piantava gli alberi. Okay? This is the point. I ask you, please, don't wait for the technology. Go plant seeds in your community. Talk to your kids. Look at what they do. Change your school. Don't wait for telecom to change your life. Don't wait for the European Union to change your life. Don't wait for the government to change it. But you can change. And this is something that was not before, simply because this is just a huge, big, tremendous enabler. I studied music now, and I do, I don't know in English, solfeggio. How do you say? Solfeggio. Because they say in Aristocats, they say arpeggios, so I may imagine to do this. And I learned music with the school director, because I live outside in the country, over Skype. In the evening, you know, I said, oh, by the way, I don't understand this. And we do it. So we do things that we have not done before. And most important, we change the way we organize our community, we take our responsibility. And this makes a big impact, makes a big, huge impact. And I'm not just a visionary. I tell you, I've done it. I have done it. And they try to kill the social network we have built 13 years ago, because there was no the political party, there was no intermediary, there was no secretary, there was not the treasurer, all this kind of stuff, okay? There was not, you don't know who am I. No, you know perfectly who am I in the network. And this is possible. It makes a huge, big difference in the way we can imagine the future of what Luca calls the agenda, okay? What's important for us in the future? The fact that we not just play with a toy, but we change the future of our own life. And it's not neutral. So it's not good, it's not bad, but it's not neutral. It can be fine, it can be very good, but it depends on us. This is why I think responsibility is on our hands. We have a tremendous thing. And finally, I want to share with you a thought that we had at this European meeting about security after the attack in Estonia and after the big attacks that are now, imagine, you know, you think that security is a problem because of worms or this kind of thing. There are things that scare the hell out of, you know, and I don't want to scare you and share too much, but, you know, there are scary future in front of us. And we were talking about identity. And someone says, oh, the future is that every single object will have an identity, a unique identifier, the Internet of Things, you know. And we are saying, no, this is not the future. This is scary. If this happens, it's scary. What happens is that identification will be a sort of mutual trust. You know, like I met you yesterday at the restaurant. He introduced me, you know. We build our trust based on relationship that we have around us. And we stay together when we have to defend. And we help him to be introduced to other. And we use something that we know from the villages in the past history, but it's not common in the internet. We think the internet is the place of the individuals. I don't think so. You know, the internet is going to be the place of friendship, of common small network of people that trust each other, that grants and that defend themselves from the other, that includes and exclude depending on interest. And this is absolutely fantastic because it's what we have done for centuries in our cities and in our life.
What do you think?
Wow. Perhaps I gave the wrong impression. I am optimist about the future. Well,
We have to have a sign saying, oh, you don't believe it, but I'm smiling. You know?
no. What I'm saying is that, well, one thing I failed to mention is that 50% of European corporate bonds, so bonds, debt emitted by, not government, but by companies, are emitted by telecommunication companies. So we have a huge problem. And the reason why we have a huge problem is why the politics will come in and solve it and roll their sleeves and solve it. And definitely we are going to see, you said the right to drink a glass of water, to breathe, etc. It's the same, exactly. So it's going to be a commons. What I'm trying to, well, it's a couple of years now that I go everywhere saying that the network, the basic infrastructure needs to be considered as a common because we have some specific things in Europe, and that is going to happen. It's going to happen mediated by politics and the so-called public-private partnerships. They are starting in Australia, in Sweden, anywhere. This movement is starting. So that's what we shall expect. So I am optimist. The problem will be solved, because otherwise it will be a catastrophe. But we are smart enough, so it will happen. Politicians will need to take care of this. About the politics, and about the...
Dope!
Well, in Italy, we have 17% of the people, 17% of the people, that is 25 years or less. We have 1.3, 1.34 children per couple. So we are getting old.
Talk for you, man.
I am old. I was born old. No. And this is a problem. And this is a problem because innovation is not in the agenda of our political class. So they are not thinking about these things. When they were starting to understand that you are talking about something that will evolve in the next 5,
Stefano,
10, 15 years.
I want to check. In European Union calls all the government to talk about security. Italian government doesn't show up. Honest.
Yeah.
So, what are we doing? Are we crying?
No.
I go there. Yes, this is the situation, but let's take this as an opportunity. I go there, I have the Italian flag in front of me, you know, I have a... I'm serious. I mean, yes, if they don't call for innovation, who the hell are you waiting for? Do it.
Yeah. And at the next event, they ask him to chair the event.
No, next time they'll ask, who's the white guy next to Stefano, you know, the Pope?
The Pope. No. Well, okay, so we need to start doing something because we represent I like very much what Obama said in the United States. This is not about being Democrat or conservative, it's being towards the future or looking at the back. We have a political system in Italy that looks much to the back, so we need to give them pressure in order to look forward. Unfortunately, elections are still won in Italy by the people that are 65 years or older, because that's where political consensus drives votes. Okay, I believe that the major shift that we can have in Italy is if we start moving and doing things and promoting things and innovation from the bottom and trying to bring this to the agenda of the political parties. I don't believe that political parties are going to disappear. We need to give them ideas, new, fresh ideas coming from the bottom. This is just what I wanted to conclude.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm working for that, as you know.
Okay, we have, unfortunately, we only have 7 minutes left. So I'm going to turn to you. Do you have anything to say about what you heard? Do you have questions? Do you have thoughts?
I have a question for Stefano. There are many places in Italy where there is no internet access, or the internet access...
Wait for the mic so that the question gets recorded and the other people looking at the stream.
My question, I think, is for Stefano in the sense there are many places in Italy where our discussion, unfortunately, is a little bit academic because internet access is with a dial-up modem. And this is all over the peninsula. Is there any real discussion in the political quarters, because I do believe it is a regulation issue, of the concept of universal service? Thank you.
Well, I don't believe that the internet is going to be part of the universal service anytime soon, but I do believe that ubiquitous access will become available in quite a short term. You know that we have the WiMAX standards. WiMAX is good in order to serve small density of people very far away, not that much for densely populated areas where you can have just little bandwidth available. We have the WiMAX standards. I believe that will help address the situation. And actually, our situation is not that bad. I mean, if you go to Montana, for example, and you try to make a phone call in Montana or to connect to the, iPhones are not sold in Montana because there is no wireless access, as a matter of fact. Yeah. That's, so I believe that the problem will be addressed.
Not that many web startups
Excuse
as well.
No, but I believe that the problem is going to be solved. I agree with David about the fact of the big media industries and how they are going to evolve, etc. You know, in these WiMAX standards in Italy, Mediaset is bidding in all areas. And they are likely to win WiMAX licenses in all areas. Now, what Elettronica Industriale? What can you expect from Mediaset, from Elettronica Industriale to use WiMAX for? I expect something like PVR with two ways communication based one part on the DTT, terrestrial digital, and the other part with WiMAX. I expect that, so a sort of Sky on steroids, okay? I believe they are going to fail. I pull out the calculator when he said 40, I don't remember how many, 120,000 blogs per day. That means 44 million blogs in a year. I mean, the complete landscape of media is going to change. If we look, it's a huge opportunity. If we don't look at the next 2-3 years, but we look at the next 5-10 years, it's a huge opportunity. This whole business is going to be redefined. Of course, the people 65 years and older that watch television, etc., they are going to be served by Mediaset, but it's a shrinking business. Okay, we have a huge opportunity in this.
Other questions? Come on.
Where is the blogosphere? They're blogging, you know, they don't talk to us.
Yeah, just
okay. I have a blog question then.
Gaspar, tell me what they're saying, please, because for sure they're blogging like hell, but please, I'm real, touch me, you know, we are not holograms.
Can David give us any data relative to the usage of blogs in Italy relative to the other countries, other than we talked earlier about growth following the same patterns as the U.S.? Any other observations specific to Italy?
Yeah, you know what I'll do? I'll try to either send something to you, Paolo, or something. I don't recall off the top of my head, and therefore I wouldn't want to quote a statistic and then be way off. But if I recall, Italian is actually in the top 10, right, of languages that that people are using to write in the blogosphere. So even though, pardon me? That's what I'm not 100%. You know what? If you go
Google,
to if you go to Sifry.com/state of the blogosphere, I'm sorry, excuse me, Sifry.com/state of the live web, all one word, state of the live web, you can actually get all of the reports, including the most recent one, and there is a slide in there that actually shows a big pie chart, and I apologize, I just don't remember the exact number, but you can get the data right there. To be able to see. And I know that Italian was definitely in the top 10. I don't remember the exact number it was in terms of the number of languages that people are posting in. So clearly, look, it's a cafe culture, right? I mean, you love going to cafes and chatting and talking, and so this has just continued to expand in the blogosphere as well, very disproportionately to the size of the population. And so I think that, so number one, the fact that there are so many people who are interested, there's so many people who are active, who are writing, who are participating, means you're actually way ahead of the curve for, you know, when you compare it to, say, Germany. I mean, Germany, it's like dead.
They don't
right?
blog.
They don't blog.
There are like
They
13
just
blogs in Germany.
Very few German bloggers, and I know I'm gonna like get killed now by about, you know, the 12 that I know, and so I think that to me, when I really start asking myself, what are some of the fundamental changes that we've started to see in the United States, and we've even more in Japan, and I think that we're gonna see as well here in Italy, is as large as this, right? And maybe, I don't know if this translates into Italian, so if not, I apologize. We, in the United States, in English, we talk about a consumer economy, right? Do we use the word consumer economy here? No?
Well, I mean, the concept of the economia dei consumatori is
Right. I mean, it's a very, like, even so much so, every year in Las Vegas they have something called CES, the Consumer Electronics Show. Okay. Right. And if you ask me, that's just an incredibly demeaning idea. Right. When you really actually start thinking about it, right, the idea of having this dichotomy between producer and consumer is going to go away. It's already dissolving, and it's only going to continue to dissolve. And I think that what this comes back to is that, look, everybody here in this room is clearly a digital have, right? We all have digital. We understand why digital technologies are so important. And the idea of there are those who produce, and there are those who consume, and the producers tell the consumers what to consume, goes away. This is the political change, right? And it's not about politicians. It's just about the fact that as power shifts away from a small group of people who tell the large group of people what to do and what to wear and what to think, that's an incredibly democratic and incredibly empowering concept. And so it then is, of course, it's our responsibility to do well, right? To be active participants in this shift in culture that's changing. What I believe is, in 10 years, we will look back and say, wow, the 20th century was really about the consumer culture and the consumer economy. And it was driven by mass industrialization. It was driven by broadcast media, which was part of basically this idea of the economies of scale of being able to have one producer owning the spectrum, sending it out to many, many consumers. And now with the internet, what the internet brings us back is to the Agora model, this model where everyone can be both a consumer and a producer, and that the cost of production is now so low that we can actually start to entertain ourselves. And that what we're really going to become in 10 years is far more of a participant culture as opposed to just a consumer culture. But that starts with every single person recognizing that as a participant, participation is active. Participation is not passive. And so that begins with each one of us saying, well, how am I affecting the people around me? And so I think, to add here where the opportunity is, you can look at the number of people who are blogging in Italian, the number of people who, and that's actually with only a 17% broadband penetration, right? So that's really, really quite, I had not heard that statistic. Oh, 22. Oh, I'm sorry, you're right, thank you. So 22% broadband penetration. I mean, in the United States, we've just gone to about 55% broadband penetration. Well, yeah. And that includes Montana. Right? So,
We have a big bandwidth with, from the Vatican up, we have a huge...
Oh, you got good bandwidth, all right.
Great bandwidth there. It sucks all the energy up.
Low latency.
Yeah, absolutely. Immediate. Guys...
So I think the opportunity that I would be looking around is, so how do we get more people, the culture is already there, right? And this culture of, of talking and this democratic culture is already there. How do you basically put that access into more people's hands? How do you help them become participants and not just consumers? That's the big mind shift, the shift in mind share that's going to be happening over the next 10 years.
yeah. And on this note, coffee break.
Can I say just one last thing?
Sure.
No, because I love the way David thinks, because he lives in America, and
Americani so far.
Americani, he lives in America. Yeah, no, I'm an optimist as well. But we need to change some rules in Italy. And we need to do that with the help of everyone. I mean, it's not possible that, for example, on Wikipedia, we need to take away all the pictures of all the images of the Italian culture because we have laws that prohibit the distribution of these images, for example. Okay, if you take a picture in Venice, you cannot post it. Okay, this is silly. Okay, we need to change things. Okay, so I really ask every one of you to try to talk to your neighbor, to your political parties, etc., because we need to try to penetrate this wall, because they simply are not listening to us. In a couple of days, I'm going to release a wiki, which is called wikidemocracy.org/wiki if you want to see it now. It's going to be up and running on next week. I invite you to go and see it and to spread the voice.
We'll
Hopefully.
post it on the blog. Okay, thank you very much. See you in half an hour.